this was what won in our Little Debbie tournament back in the spring. But I'm not a Swiss roll fan, so judge me if you want. I'm totally okay with that. But anyway, I thought that would be fun to throw in for all of you Little Debbie fans. So I want to ask you again, when is a time that you have experienced the emotion of an end result not being what you had in mind? I want you to take just a minute or two. Don't take this exercise too seriously. And I want you, if you're in here, if you're in person, I want you to discuss at your table maybe a time you experienced that. If you're at home, share that with the person that you're watching with. A time that you have experienced the emotion of an end result not being what you had in mind. Okay, go. All right, now some of you may be wondering where I'm going with this, but as we open up in chapter 1 with the book of Micah, we open up with God's judgment right off the bat. God gets started on the judgment towards his people, and I'm just imagining that both he and Micah are possibly asking the question, what happened? The reality is not matching up with the expectation. And that is what we explore in the entire book of Micah. Now, from the beginning, I want to explore kind of some of the main things, some of the main themes throughout Micah. So Micah is one of the minor prophets. That doesn't mean that he is less important. Greg brought this up in his first week of teaching. I want you guys to share with me what it means to be a minor prophet. Okay, you guys have a grasp on that. So the second thing I want to bring up is that Micah was a contemporary of Isaiah and Hosea. And a lot of those themes are very similar. In the book of Micah, there are several themes that correlate to both Amos and Isaiah, but also within the story of Hosea. It's believed that Micah prophesied around 700 to 800 years prior to Jesus' birth. Micah is also prophesying during the time of the Assyrian Empire. And this is a really important part of the story of Micah and his prophecies. So if you guys are world history buffs, or if you know anything about history, you know that the Assyrian Empire was incredibly powerful. And at the time that Micah is prophesying, what the Assyrian Empire is doing is they are marching across what is current day Middle East. So think Iraq, think that geographical area. And the Assyrian Empire, the Assyrian army is marching across the Middle East, and they are just conquering land after land after land after land. And what they do when they conquer, they take the people from the land that they have just conquered, and they take that group of people and they move them to a different land. So they're taken out of their homeland, moved to a different place that the Assyrian Empire has conquered. And then they take the people from where they've just moved a group of people, and they move those people to a different land that is not their homeland. Now, it's believed that the Assyrian Empire did this in order to prevent rebellion from the people, to kind of keep their tabs on them. There's a lot of corruption taking place. There's a lot of mistreatment of people from the Assyrian Empire and forced upon these other people. And so Micah is prophesying during this time. Micah is also prophesying during a time that is believed Judah was experiencing great prosperity. So things were going good for Judah right now. There was lots of money. Landowners had land. Things were going good in Judah. And so Micah is prophesying during two big things going on. Number one, the Assyrian Empire marching toward Judah. Number two, Judah experiencing a great time of prosperity. So here's a breakdown of the book. Chapters 1 through 3, we open up, I alluded to this earlier, we open up with judgment on Jerusalem. God's judgment, and it is just bam, bam, bam. It is one after the other of judgments. And this is God speaking through Micah. Then we go to chapters 4 and 5. And what we notice in these two chapters is a contrast of kingdoms. So we've got a contrast of the kingdom of human corruption, okay, versus divine restoration. We've got those two things going on, this kind of tension in chapters 4 and 5, where God is saying, look, you guys are behaving like this, but here's my redeeming plan. Okay? And then in chapters 6 and 7, it's a case against sin, and once we get into the lesson tonight, we'll pick up on kind of the setting for that and how it looks like a courtroom, how God's language kind of brings up that visual in our minds of a courtroom setting where God is the judge and the people of Israel are making their case. And then the most beautiful part of Micah, a promise of restoration and rescue. So throughout the entire book of Micah, you are going to see this common theme of judgment, but then rescue and restoration. All right, so what does that mean for us? This judgment versus restoration, that is the common theme of the book. But a more practical question or a more practical thought